Welcome everybody. Today we are hosting the Clean Sky event. Clean Aviation for a competitive green recovery in Europe. And innovations take flight today. Well, you may wonder who I am. I am not one of yours. I'm not an industry insider. I am not working in aviation at all. I'm a journalist and a filmmaker. And I fly a lot, possibly like you do. Although everybody can say we haven't flown at all in the last couple of years. It's true for me too. But because I fly a lot, I started to get bothered by this dilemma of how to fly and can we not fly any better? So I decided to make a television series. It's called Sky Gods, The Price of Our Love for Flying. And we just finished it. And it's all about the dilemmas of flying. But for you, it is interesting to know it's all about the change that we need to make happen into how to fly better. If you are interested in learning more about it, you can actually go to my website and you can write me an email and we're happy to talk to you because this film is made for you, for the industry and together with the industry. So that's why I'm here. I've learned so much about aviation in the last 3 years. I traveled all over the world looking for answers, how to fly better in the future. What are the innovations? What can we do? What are the efficiencies? So there's a few things I want to mention before we kick off. Well, first of all, we're really proud to announce that there are 1,700 people participating. That's amazing. It just shows how popular this topic is and how much interest there is to really tackle this. So I'm very happy and thankful that we have this. And just there's people from France to Germany, from China to Indonesia, Malaysia, Iceland. We have people from all over the world. We have people from industry, we have people from pure research, and we have policymakers. All the really important stakeholders are present. And that is what we need to make things happen and to move forward. There's lots and lots of time for you all to ask questions, to Q&A from the audience. So please use the function on your screen. And if there's a technical problem, let us know. You can just send a message to the help desk participants in case you just don't get your question out. And please do not forget to fill out the forms at the end of this event, because we really want to know what you think, what we can do better, what you like, what you didn't like. And well, for now, let's hope you enjoy this event. It's really chock full of great people, great ideas, good interests. But I want to give the floor to our very own Axel Krijn. He is the Executive Director of Clean Sky. Axel, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Bernice, and hello and a good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear Clean Sky community members. I would like to very warmly welcome you to this very special Clean Sky event on a very special day. Today is Earth Day, as you may know, and today is also the first day of the Leaders Summit on Climate. So we are in good company, and I'm glad that you are joining us today. I'm delighted by the high interest, and as Bernice has said, 1,700 participants, an all-time record for Clean Sky. And as you have seen, we also have an extraordinary cast of speakers with a tremendous expertise and experience. During this afternoon, we would like to discuss with you about the political agenda of the European Commission, the Council and the Parliament in the domains of transport, research, and also competitiveness. We will hear about the future of aviation and particularly the future of innovation in aviation, as you can imagine. And we will also hear about the Clean Sky program results today. And the speakers will comment on the future Clean Aviation program. Let me now briefly introduce to you some of the highlights, the facts and figures about Clean Sky. We have reached now about 950 different entities all across Europe. More than 5,000 of Europe's top engineers and scientists from industrial leaders, from SMEs, from universities, and from research organizations are participating in Clean Sky, all working together all across Europe for a reduction of CO2, NOx, and noise emissions, as you can see them here on the left-hand side. We have been spearheading initiatives with European regions, and we have cooperation agreements in place with all the regions you see there on the right-hand side, all in all 18 regions all across the continent. On the next slide here, you see the full scope of the technology demonstration activities within the Clean Sky program. Our flagship demonstrators are focusing on aerodynamical improvements, structural and systems developments, whole new propulsion systems developments, and last but not least, also radically new aircraft configurations. And in spite of COVID-19 and some delays, which we have accounted, we are working on mitigating those challenges. And we are holding course for delivering our flagship demonstrators within the time frame of the Clean Sky 2 program. Although, and I think I'm not telling you anything new, and I would like to reiterate that achieving all those objectives will be not sufficient to reach the newly formulated target, climate neutrality by 2050. So what does climate neutrality concretely mean for the different sectors? This is shown here on the graph on the left-hand side of the slide. The dotted red line is indicating the challenge. By 2050, the net greenhouse gas emissions in Europe shall be zero. Radical change for all sectors and specifically also for aviation. In order to understand now how this can be achieved, let's move over to the right-hand side of that slide. This graph, which has been extracted from a recent study from the NLR, the Netherlands Aerospace Research Center, shows the CO2 emissions of aviation in Europe from 2018 up to 2050. You see the dotted blue line at the top of the colored areas. This is the hypothetical growth scenario up to 2050. And on the bottom, you see the solid green line. This is the target, gradual reduction to zero CO2. And you also see the implications of COVID-19, this significant dip at the beginning of the curve. This is still challenging the resilience of the entire worldwide aviation ecosystem, as you all know. So what are the levers now? And the levers are on the very right-hand side. What are the levers now for improvement to achieve zero CO2 by 2050? We have identified four main levers. Firstly, new aircraft technologies with close to 40% fuel burn and CO2 improvement potential. This is the core work of the future Clean Aviation Partnership. Secondly, improved air traffic management with a potential of roughly 6%. Thirdly, new sustainable aviation fuels with a potential of about 45%. Also here, highest interest for the new Clean Aviation Partnership with a focus on hydrogen. And we hear much more about that in the course of today. And fourthly, the impact of economic measures like, for example, the European ETS. At Clean Sky, we are currently working together with the European Commission and our private stakeholders on a tangible, effective, and extremely ambitious technology roadmap, which is describing the path towards the development and the demonstration of mature technologies before 2028. The execution of this roadmap will require huge efforts on research and innovation within a very, very ambitious timeframe. Our speakers this afternoon are representing a variety of public and private stakeholders, and they will provide you with their view on how to best address all those points at European, but also at global level. During the past 10 years, Clean Sky has already delivered significant contributions to aviation, and we very much look forward to continuing this path within the new environment of Horizon Europe. I wish you all a very engaging and interesting afternoon, and now back to Bernice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Axel. Well, let's start right away. We have our commissioner present. Is she there? I think she is. Mrs. Adina Valiant, are you there? Yes. She's going to give us a talk about sustainable aviation in the new normal, a priority for a strong and competitive Europe. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to share with you some of my thoughts on sustainable aviation in the new normal. In some ways, nothing is as it was 2 years ago for our sector. In others, and I'm thinking in particular of sustainability and competitiveness, nothing has changed. In the current context, recovery is a primary focus. But this recovery is also an opportunity to shape the future of aviation sector. That future must be in line with the ambitious climate goals set out in our European Green Deal. We have committed to 55% reduction of the emissions by 2030 and to be climate neutral by 2050. This means a 90% reduction in transport emissions overall. To illustrate the challenge, in pre-COVID times, we managed impressive fuel efficiency gains, only for an increase in air traffic to cancel out the progress made. In fact, emissions increased worldwide. It is clear that a much more radical and disruptive path is needed to achieve our objectives. I realize that decarbonization in aviation, it's not an easy task, and that there is no silver bullet solution. Thus, we are approaching the challenge from all possible angles, with measures to support a shift to sustainable fuels, others to compensate for emissions in the short term, to ease the replacement of fleets with sustainable zero emissions alternatives as soon as the technology is market ready. Speaking about technology, technological progress demonstrated in the coming years will be the key to maintaining, or rather regaining, our license to fly in the eyes of the public. It will also help us return the European aviation and aeronautics industry to its pre-COVID competitive position. We have an opportunity to be a world leader in sustainable aviation technology and standard setting, if the industry commits to cutting emissions. In research, this means looking beyond battery-based electrification, which by its nature will be limited to small aircraft, rotorcraft, and unmanned flying. It also means going beyond reconfiguring traditional aircraft. It means developing zero-emission aircraft that embrace electrification or hydrogen-based solutions, which must be deployed at scale. I expect to see single-aisle zero-emission aircraft ready for takeoff towards 2013, with larger aircraft following suit in the decades and years to follow. But we cannot put aviation on hold until we replace our current fleets. Instead, we need to identify technology allowing the most efficient use of drop-in sustainable aviation fuels, will also supporting research on ultra-efficient engines and aircraft configuration. In February, the Commission adopted its proposal for Clean Aviation Joint Undertaking, which will follow in the impressive footsteps of Clean Sky 2. A draft strategic research and innovation agenda for the new partnership is in place, covering elected and hybrid flying, ultra-efficient small and regional aircraft, and hydrogen-powered aviation, among other topics. I'm very happy to see that industry is willing to match the 1.7 billion in EU investment proposed for the partnership. Then again, technology alone cannot cut emissions to the extent needed. We also need sustainable fuels, market-based measures, and more efficient air traffic management. We have a real opportunity to take a leading role in sustainable aviation fuels. So it frustrates me that their potential is still so largely untapped. They currently account for only 0.05% of current fuel use. The Commission will adopt the Refuel EU Aviation legislative proposals in the coming weeks, tackling this chicken and egg situation in which there is no demand because there is no production and vice versa. By establishing a long-term and robust regulatory framework with binding targets for sustainable aviation fuels, I want to give certainty to the market. This will encourage much-needed investment in production capacity. To further support take-up, we are planning a strategic alliance for renewable and low-carbon fuel value chains. I know that there is clear interest in this initiative within the aviation industry. Market-based measures will naturally include the EU's emission trading system, the so-called ETS. And as announced in the European Green Deal, we will propose reducing the free allocation of allowances to airlines. Aviation is global, so to maintain a level playing field and mitigate the risk of competitive distortions between the EU and non-EU market actors, the air transport sector needs ambitious and robust rules at the ICAO level. We'll continue to step up our efforts in this regard, and we must lead by example. As of 1st of January, EU member states are participating in the pilot phase of ICAO's CORSIA. We are currently assessing different options on how the EU's ETS for aviation and CORSIA could interact in the future. We should never overlook the role of air traffic management in reducing aviation emissions. This is why I'm so keen to see progress on an ambitious single European sky reform. A recent Eurocontrol study used fuel burn data to calculate the fuel consumption and therefore also CO2 emissions. Calculate that fuel consumptions can be reduced by 8.6% through efficient ATM. The CESAR joint undertaking has already given us very promising solutions in this regard, and I'm confident we'll continue to deliver more. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with a formidable but critical mission. Aviation is one of the EU's flagship industries, and before the pandemic, a huge contributor to our economy. So it is in everyone's interest to see the sector recover and remain viable as we pursue the EU climate objectives. The hurdles ahead are daunting, but we can see outlines of the way forward. I'm here to underline the Commission's support and commitment to creating an environment in which our technological breakthroughs can have the impact, market uptake, and worldwide application that they deserve and that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Vălean. We have two questions for you, if we may. If and when we all get back into airplanes, one could think of a scenario that growth can easily outpace all the sustainable measures we have put into place. How can we stay ahead of decarbonation of the aviation industry?
Well, we remained somehow in planes because what we managed to do, and I think the industry and the companies, was to maintain the connectivity across Europe and with, for our citizens and essential workers. And I do believe that with developments in epidemiological situation like the increased number of vaccinated people with improvements in and results of all the efforts the citizens have done with lockdowns and restrictions, we will have a better summer season. So I really hope much more, many people will benefit from the possibility of traveling during the summer. The other question you have raised, I must say that the development of new aircraft and their production takes a considerable amount of time. In addition, when the technology is on the market, the time to replace an aircraft fleet takes around from 20 to 30 years. This means that if we want to reach climate neutrality by 2050, we have to start now with the development of a new carbon-free generation of aircraft. For the new partnership, Clean Aviation, we have made an effort to allow close involvement and early knowledge exchange of EASA, our safety agency, that will have to certify the new technology. Time to market should be as short as possible in order to reach our ambitious but realistic objective. We very much look forward to traffic resumption and growth. We will have to work towards a gradual reduction of emissions by applying a basket of measures. I've mentioned already in my speech some of them. Sustainable fuels, infrastructure, and production capacity are sufficient to use the full potential of this measure, and then market-based measures to ensure the uptake of sustainable products. Then apply the ETS and the CORSIA, both schemes, and absolutely necessarily, I really hope progress will be made for the improved air traffic management. So this is in a nutshell an answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for your insight and your vision and the way ahead to make us more all sustainable. That's very encouraging. You set, by the way, very well the tone for how we continue with our first panel, which is where we're starting to right now, the green recovery in Europe. Aviation is playing its part. Part 1. Well, first of all, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Guillaume Faury. He is the CEO of Airbus. In fact, we have a lot of important speakers in the aviation industry right now, from airlines to air manufacturers to motors to airports. We're going to jump right into it. The floor is yours, Mr. Faury.
Hello, everyone, and very happy to contribute to this event. Axel, thank you very much for organizing. Well, I have understood I have a short introduction to make, and I would like to not repeat what the commissioner has said, but maybe give a bit of a view on what's the challenge ahead of us. When we look back, aviation really started, commercial aviation, less than a century ago, so a few decades in the past. And it started with planes that were unreliable, short range, small number of seats, just emerging from World War II, where those planes were mainly used in military. And in a number of decades, we have managed to create an aviation network connecting people around the world based on airports, so without a deep infrastructure on the ground, contrarily to other means of transport, and create a safe environment for people to travel freely. And it means flying planes at 1,000 kilometers per hour, at 10,000 meters, where the temperature is minus 50 degrees, with levels of reliability and safety, which are second to none in the industry of transport. Well, that's where we start from. Now we have a huge challenge ahead of us, which is to decarbonize this industry. But when it comes to impact on the ground, when it comes to protecting ecosystem, aviation goes in the sky and is not impacting the ecosystems we are trying to protect by preventing climate change. So indeed, aviation is, in my view, the mode of transport of the future and not of the past when it comes to protecting the planet. Well, we have the carbon challenge, and yes, and we want to take the bull by the horns at Airbus. We think that's a challenge, but we've done things in the past, as I tried to indicate, which in my view were by far more difficult than decarbonizing aviation. The thing is, we don't have time, we don't have much time. So what we really believe we need is a lot of support. We don't want to be blocked, to be slowed down in this transition. We want to be helped, we want to be encouraged, because Europe and aerospace in Europe is one of the few sectors where we are clear world leaders. We have made this possible, and I want, and we want to make sure we will give to our children and grandchildren the possibility to continue to fly the world, but in a way that will not impact negatively the sustainability of the planet, and therefore this carbon challenge. So a lot of things to be done. We are very excited by this challenge. At Airbus, we are really preparing ourselves. You might have seen in the past days, we have announced a significant reorganization of our industrial activities. It's also to be prepared for the challenges of the new planes that will be decarbonized, but that will come with very different kind of shapes and architectures. And we need, and we want, and we will be ready for that. So it's a challenge, but it's a fantastic challenge if we take it positively. There are a lot of questions, and I think we're here also to address those questions and give the answers. So very happy to participate to the panel with the other speakers.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to you in just a second with the Q&A. Looking forward to that. Okay, second speaker is Mr. Olivier Andries. He's the CEO of Safran. And the floor is yours for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Aviation sector has been badly hit by the pandemic, as you know, and our revenues, the global revenues have tumbled in 2020. For us, it has been minus 35 year-on-year versus 2019. Recovery will take time. We expect to return to pre-crisis level by 2024 and not before. At the same time, the crisis, as every crisis, has also been an accelerator of trends that existed before. Indeed, meeting the climate change challenge has become, as a global aviation sector, our #1 priority, and our continent has a willingness and the talent to become the #1 climate neutral continent by 2050. So it is a chance for us to be here, to be there. But time is of essence, as meeting such a challenge requires the aviation industry to intensify, heighten its efforts to prepare and mature the technologies that we will need for the next generation aircraft, meeting the zero emission objective. At this particular moment, where we are most affected by the pandemic, we have to look at it as a formidable opportunity to be at the forefront of the climate change challenge. But we need for that the public support, as Guillaume has said, and would like to insist on that, from the EU to foster the additional effort and resources that we will have to put in place to get there. As a global engine manufacturer, Safran is willing to lead the way towards decarbonization of the aviation. This will require to skip a generation of engine through bringing to market by 2035 an ultra high efficient engine, very sober, delivering a 20% improvement in fuel consumption compared with the latest generation of engine that has just been brought to market 5 years ago. So for that, we need to go the disruptive way. And we will capitalize and leverage on all what we've learned from the open rotor demonstrator that has been launched in the frame of the Clean Sky program. We target a flight demonstration by 2025. Another point I want to mention is the necessity of a massive development of sustainable fuel, as they are part of the solution. Technology will not bring the entire way, the entire trajectory to get to zero emission. We need also sustainable fuels. Technology and sustainable fuels, including hydrogen, are the two main pillars of our trajectory. At present, sustainable fuel can replace up to 50% of fossil fuels as a drop-in solution. And we are working to increase this level to 100% in the coming years. There is no technical barrier here. It's easy technically. We just need to fix the economical equation at the cost of sustainable fuels today is 4 times higher. This is why we mostly welcome the Commission Refuel Aviation Initiative to include a blending mandate of at least a double-digit percentage by 2030, as it will enable the demand and therefore foster the supply. Sustainable fuel and hydrogen are complementary solutions to meet our zero emission objective. We indeed cannot wait until 2035 to act. We need to act now on the existing fleet to meet the challenge. This is why we plan, together with our partner Airbus, some airlines, including Air France and Lufthansa, and the fuel producers, to forge a sustainable fuel alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Andries. I'd like to give the microphone to Mr. Carsten Spoor. He's the CEO of Lufthansa, so we hear from the airline industry. Mr. Carsten, you take your time.
Yes, thank you. And again, also on my behalf, thanks for your good work, including hosting today's conference, because I think the programs you're running are indispensable to eventually green aviation in the speed and in the magnitude which we're all thinking about. And that's why Lufthansa has been a proud member from the very beginning. If we all really want to achieve zero or net zero CO2 emissions by 2050, it obviously, and my pre-speakers have mentioned that, will take a whole basket of measures. And today, due to the limits also in terms of time, let me just focus and address 2 of them. The first one, and I know my friend Guillaume from Airbus will like that, is fleet renewal for us as an airline. Every new aircraft replacing an older aircraft usually gives us 25% less fuel in the average. That's why, for example, Lufthansa has been the launching customer of the 320neo and will also be the launching customer of the Boeing 777X. So whenever there is new technology available, we try to invest, because this remains for many, many decades the largest level to reduce emissions. And of course, CO2 with it, and of course also cost in terms of fuel. And it needs to be said, because it's just an honest truth, that the current crisis, of course, limits and reduces our ability as airlines to invest into new aircraft. And an example from our company, the Lufthansa Group, in the last years received a new aircraft every 2 weeks. And we are now forced, due to the additional debt we have taken on board through the pandemic, to reduce that to a delivery rate of only 1 aircraft every 4 weeks. And that, of course, will slow down the renewal in our company, but surely similar in many other companies. Then it's also obvious that we need to find smart incentives within Europe, within the European Commission, to support and accelerate that fleet renewal program. It's obvious that there has been huge success done on this with cars. And I think in our case, the step from one airplane to the other, as just mentioned, is much larger than the step from one car to the other. So I think we need to maintain our dialogue with governments and the European Commission to help us to speed up that fleet modernization. The second lever I want to mention today, and it has been mentioned before, obviously, is sustainable aviation fuels, which are reducing CO2 emissions significantly. We have been committed to this actually for more than 10 years. It was 10 years ago, we had the first flight from actually Frankfurt to Hamburg with one of the two engines 100% fueled by sustainable aviation fuels. And we have been working with various suppliers and universities since then. But it's also worth to say that there are major challenges on this. One, of course, is the price. And currently, anywhere between 3 to 7 times, we estimate the cost of fossil fuels will need to be taken into account for sustainable fuels. And also here, to give you an example from our company, in the last years, we made about 15 euros profit per passenger. And we had fuel cost of about 45 euros per passenger. If you now think or imagine these fuel costs go up times 3, times 4, times 5, it's obvious it doesn't not only eat away all your profit, it actually makes your business model unbearable. So it's obvious that the fuel price of these new fuels need to get much closer to today's available fossil fuels. And also there, I think it's worth to say this will not be done by the market alone. I think we need a cooperation with governments to bring it to that point. But even with prices coming down, there's another limit, availability. Also an example there I've used before, if all the sustainable fuel would be available in the world to our company, Lufthansa alone, it would take us less than a week to burn all that fuel in our fleet. So it's not only about the price, it's also about supply availability. And last but not least, of course, we need to make sure that blending even small percentages of this fuel doesn't distort competition on the global scale. If we do that in Europe, which we're all committed to do, there's obviously competitors outside of Europe, be it in New York, be it in London, be it in Istanbul, be it in Dubai, who, if they're not mandatorily blending, having additional cost, obviously will distort the competition. We already significantly are disadvantaged as European players for various reasons. But nevertheless, we need to do it. We need to get there. It's also our customers who drive us to it. It's initially individual customers, passengers, who are using our platform compensate to buy sustainable aviation fuels. And now we are talking more to corporate customers who want all their corporate travelers to fly with this fuel. So I think it is getting that interest in line with options to really make it a reality. And that is why, also as mentioned before, we, together with the panelists and some others in the industry, have kicked off an Sustainable Aviation Fuel Alliance for Aviation. I think it will play a major role in paving the way. But of course, even though I wanted to focus on two, there's other elements. Most of them mentioned already, so I don't need to repeat that. Single European sky, obviously. And let's also not forget to mention that we are the only mode of transport which is currently already covered by the European Emission Trading System and the global system of CORSIA. So I think it's worth to say that our industry already is playing its role in the global initiative for battle climate change. But on top, as I mentioned, there's a lot more which can be done. But it can only be done together with governments, with manufacturers, of course, with us airlines as customers, with our customers, be it individual customers or corporate customers, because eventually somebody has to pay for this. And last but not least, I think this all needs to be done in a way which doesn't distort international competitiveness, be it for European manufacturers or be it for European airlines like us. And that joint effort is what it takes. And therefore, again, I appreciate today's conference and hand back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spoor. I hope your airline will recover soon. The final speaker of this panel is going to be Mr. Olivier Jankovic, and he is the Director General of Airports Council International of Europe. Please give your 3 minutes remark.
Thank you, Bernice, and good afternoon to all, and thank you for having also the airport part of this very important discussions. I think the Commissioner Valian said it in her introduction. She said, well, the industry needs to commit. And I think if you look at the last 12 months and how we've taken the opportunity of this crisis to work together, it's clear that we've come forward as industry all together with a very clear commitment to net zero by 2050 through the Destination 2050 study. And actually, the slides that Axel showed in its introduction from NLR actually came from that study. So we have a clear commitment. We have a very clear roadmap that we've developed together based on a number of pathways. And indeed, as you've listened to Guillaume, Olivier, and Karsten, I think it's very clear that, well, it's a tremendous challenge and that there's no magic wand. And I'd like to come back to the issue of cooperation and support there, because I think this is very crucial to succeed. I think cooperation within the industry and alignment within the industry, again, I think with Destination 2050 report that was published last month, we've shown that we can and we want to do it. But clearly we can't do this alone, in that it takes more than two to tango. And the challenge is really to get in this moment, especially because of the impact of COVID-19, and in enabling supportive policy, regulatory, and financial frameworks, both at EU and national levels. And clearly we're not yet there. This is work in progress. But there, I think, to secure that alignment between industry and policymakers, we also need to think out of the box and disruptively in terms of how the EU institution works and how they relate to industry. I think we're being told that, of course, we all need to be disruptive and think out of the box. That applies to technology, that applies to how industry will revisit its own business models. But crucially, I think it needs to apply also to the way we relate and we work with our policymakers. And that's why, actually, together with our other industry partners, we have proposed the development of an EU Pact for Sustainable Aviation, which would be a way of keeping both sides accountable to each other when it comes to our joint ambition, common ambition for decarbonization. And we will be, in the next 10 days, making very concrete proposals to the EU institutions on how we could see that pact functioning, how it could be articulated, and how we could drive the very necessary alignment between policymakers, regulators, and industry. Now, when it comes to airports, of course, we're part of that and we need to play our part. And there's two aspects there. First, we need to decarbonize ourselves for the emissions that are under our own control. And that's mainly emissions from our buildings and ground equipment. And actually, airports in Europe have been working for more than 12 years on that already through airport carbon accreditation with the support of the Commission of the UNFCCC. We have now 167 airports in Europe that are actively working on reducing their emissions, that are certified under the program, that are being monitored. 52 airports in Europe are already carbon neutral. And for the past 2 years, we've already committed to net zero for our own emissions. And actually, Swedavia, the Swedish airport operator, has become the first airport operator globally in the world to achieve net zero for its own emissions. So that's progressing. The challenge there is not technical. It's increasingly a financial challenge, of course, because of the impact of COVID-19. And I must say, at the moment, we're not seeing the kind of support we would like to see when it comes to access to the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility, the EU Recovery Fund. Clearly, it should be a no-brainer that a sector like ours, which is very much impacted by COVID-19, should get access to the EU Recovery Fund for decarbonization, but actually the criteria set by the Commission exclude most of airports from having access to it. And this is something we are, of course, engaging with the Commission at the moment. The second aspect when it comes to airports is that we need to, of course, support airlines in their own decarbonization efforts. I think there's a very important role for airports there. It's a lot about operational improvements. The Commission has mentioned that, but it's going to be a lot about how we can basically facilitate the supply of biofuel, SAF, hydrogen, and also more electrical power. And that will need a significant reconfiguration of our infrastructure, a lot of advanced planning, a lot of investment there too. And for there, we will need also the right regulatory and financial framework to be able to work with the airlines and the manufacturers in a way that we can predict and plan ahead. But we're firmly, of course, committed to that. And I'll close here for the introduction remarks. Thank you very much, Bernice.
Thank you very well, Mr. Jankovic. If you all would please turn on your microphone again, the four of you, so we can start our discussion with the panelists. Yeah, I'm going to wait a moment for that to happen. Are we all there? Sort of.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are. Okay. Well, it's for me personally very delightful to have people from the industry at the heart of aviation, you know, saying where your future lies. And if I can just sort of sum it up, it's two things that stick out to me. It is time and cost. And then we need to be disruptive and we need to be out of the box thinking, those things. And we know a lot of things is a time scale is complicated. It takes time to develop these technologies and it costs a lot of money and we need policy to really embrace this. But to all of you, if you can just pick one thing that we can actually do today, now, that excel us, that's propel us into more sustainable aviation, what would that be? Anyone? It's a question to all of you.
Well, I start and not with the one thing, because I think we have different time horizons. Very short term, replacing old planes by modern ones that have a much lower carbon footprint. Almost short term, mid term is all what has been said about the sustainable aviation fuels, because the fleet which is in service is mainly capable of up to 50% of blend in the fuel, and we are not using that capacity. It is as if we would have a plug-in hybrid car with a big battery capable of electricity and gasoline, and we would never put electricity in the battery because electricity is not available at the place, and we would only drive with a gasoline engine, and then there's no benefit of having a plug-in hybrid. This is what we have with the current fleet. The planes are capable of 50% of SAF, and because of the egg and chicken problem that was mentioned before, we are not leveraging that capacity. And midterm, long-term, that's what we have put on the agenda big time, is going to zero emission planes. It takes time. The technologies will take roughly 5 years to develop, then we have to enter into the development of the planes. And therefore, those planes will enter into service only in the mid of the 2030s. That's why we need to do the rest very, very urgently, because each and every gram of CO2 that goes into the atmosphere will stay for a long time. So we need to be fast also on the short-term measures.
Okay, thank you. Anybody to follow that?
Well, I'm happy to go ahead. I will follow, of course, the Dutch advice to only have one. The French don't follow the Dutch as much as the Germans do this. I think the one thing I would do, let's take the various aviation taxes and invest it into fleet modernization.
Right. Okay. Mr. Andreas, have any thoughts about the one thing you can do? Of course, engines are same.
I was going to say exactly the same as Guillaume. I think sustainable fuel is the very short-term measure that we have to take, as we have an enormous potential to act now. And this is why we need this mandate from the EU as soon as possible, not wait for additional months or years. We need it now. In a fairness way, as Carsten has said, it has to be in a very fair way to avoid any distortion of competition. This is really what we need to do now. And then put in place the program and the Clean Aviation program in order to enable us, to prepare the future. But this is not the same timing horizon as Guillaume has said. But, in the aviation industry, 2035 is tomorrow, in fact. Is tomorrow, because in order to meet that challenge technically, we need to speed up now in terms of resources, in terms of research and technology spending. We need to act now. That's why we need this support.
Yeah. Which brings up another question. Of course, we're all here in Europe.
I may have my own question.
Absolutely. Airports you need to provide the infrastructure for the SAF fuels. That's true.
Indeed.
Indeed, and indeed,
Yes.
of course, I support what my fellow panelists have just said. But from an infrastructure point of view, I think a very easy win and something we could make happen now is the single European sky. Actually, we've been waiting for that for 20 years. States have been dragging their feet. You know, they have the possibility to very concretely reduce CO2 emissions for aviation very quickly by relinquishing a bit of their grip onto air navigation service providers and make sure they become more efficient. I think there's no more excuse now, and they must be held accountable for that.
Yes. Oh, very well. This was actually a question I wanted to ask our commissioner earlier, William. I think it's really important for us because we're, of course, Europe. And the big thing is always how can we maintain a level playing field, right? So we're doing our part in Europe, and then there is the United States, and then there is Asia. What if we are going to make all these investments? You as companies, we get support from our policymakers, and the other countries are not doing that. What is your opinion about that? Because I'm sure you're thinking about it. It needs to happen everybody together globally.
I think it's happening while we speak. The European emission trading system, which I tend to be a big fan of, is putting a burden on us for domestic flights within Europe, which we are feeding our hubs with. If you fly from Sweden via Munich or Paris to Singapore, you're part of it. If you're flying from Sweden via Dubai or Doha to Singapore, you're not. So I think we already are losing jobs, to your question, what is happening while we speak. And we have to make sure that there's nothing put on top of this. So I think at least the hubs, which are transporting passengers to destinations or origins outside of Europe, need to be neutralized. Within Europe, it's a different story. There you might create a level playing field for those who are moving passengers from A to B. But for anybody who moves a passenger from A via B to C outside of Europe, there I think we need to have very fast a level playing field to stop losing more jobs as we are currently doing. And we're even creating sometimes detours of passengers, trying to save money, putting a higher burden on the environment. So I think it's not only about jobs and creation of value for shareholders, it's also in the interest of the environment.
Okay, thank you. I have a question specifically for Airbus and Safran. Is Clean Aviation budget appropriate for the ambition and timing of the objectives? And they smile.
Olivier, do you want to start?
Well, with all the respect, we believe it's a little bit tight. It's a tight. We appreciate the effort, though. So it's already extremely helpful, but it would be a little bit tight versus our ambitions and all other things that we need to do. This is why I think it would be good to make sure that this is complemented by potentially other countries joining the effort. I think of the UK as an example.
Okay.
Right. A few words maybe from my side. And well, Clean Sky, Clean Aviation is something that supports the development of a decarbonized competitive aviation. So it's a good thing. So obviously you want more of the good things that is supporting. I think when we look at Europe, and again, Clean Sky, Clean Aviation is something very positive. We have also a lot of negatives. The tendency is always to regulate, to put more handcards, to put taxes, to try to slow down the industry, whereas I see in other places, be the US or others, a different trend, which is to try to create the environment for companies to innovate, to be fast, to invest. And this is what I would like to see more of in Europe. So I would say clean aviation is the right thing. Let's do more of the right things. We can be faster with more investment, but we need as well to have an environment, an ecosystem, a level playing field with the rest of the world where innovation is encouraged, where we are given the means to make profitable business so we can invest because we want to invest. I think we're all on the same page now. It's a matter of speed, and to be fast, we need the means.
Okay, thank you very much. I turn to the floor now. We have questions from all of us, the 1,700 people that are participating virtually. And here's the first question. Is the transition to renewable energy sources fast enough for SAF and hydrogen to be available in the right quantities? Well, that looks like a question for Mr. Oliver Jankovic, yeah?
Well, I think, to be honest, it's more a question for Guillaume and Olivier. So I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, he already mentioned it earlier.
I think it's a question for me, I guess. No, the answer is it's not fast enough.
Nice.
Other speakers said it. We need to be faster. And I think if there is one message that I would like to pass here, we can turn aviation into by far more decarbonized and ultimately a completely decarbonized industry if we have the right fuels. And those fuels are existing. Short term, there are different ways of doing SAFs, sustainable aviation fuels. Mid-term, long-term, be it e-fuels or hydrogen, we will need very large quantities of decarbonized electricity. And I think there's something super important, which is to start now investing by far more amounts of money. And we are at times where we spend a lot of public money for COVID-19. Let's turn that money into the decarbonization of energy, because then we can have decarbonized electricity. And if it's cheap decarbonized electricity and there are means to do it that require huge investment now, we would have the means to have those decarbonized fuels. And that's where, yes, we can be much faster with more money.
Yeah. I'm going to ask a question because I'm personally very curious. Mr. Spoor, for you, for Lufthansa, is it already possible that your clients can invest in sustainable aviation fuel? If they fly, they can invest in it in some sort of production somewhere?
Well, what we are offering to our customers, it's our platform called Compensate. And customers can choose how they compensate for their flights, anywhere between additional trees all the way down to taking sustainable aviation fuel on board in the exact amount what they will burn on their flight.
Yeah.
And that is about 40 to 50 euros for a flight within Europe. It goes up to 400, 500 euros for a long range flight if you do go to 100% sustainable aviation fuel. And we do that then on one of the next flights, because obviously physically for the flight the passenger is on, we can't do that. But it's also true that less than 1% of our passengers choose this option. So I think one element of honesty we all need, that as also my co-panelists have said, this will cost us money initially and it has to come from somewhere. And it can only come either from the consumer or from the taxpayer or a mixture of thereof. So indeed, to answer your question, yes, it can be done by anybody flying on the Lufthansa Group flights as we speak, yeah.
Great. Good news. I have a last question. We sort of have to stick to our time, unfortunately. What are the two biggest challenges the sector is going to face to deliver zero pollution by 2050? And what are the risks of failing and how will you address those risks? Those are two questions. Who wants to answer that?
I think the main risk is really in the alignment between what we're prepared to do, our commitment, and the policy and financing framework that enables us to deliver on those commitments. I think that's the key element to me to ensure success. Because I mean, Guillaume and Olivier have said it. I mean, aviation has gone through many challenges in the past. We've gone through many technological breakthroughs. And there's no reason to believe we can't achieve, technologically wise, these breakthrough of decarbonization. But it needs, as Carsten said, it's the money will need to be there, the right regulatory framework will need to be there, and that's going to be the key condition for success.
Yeah, and somebody wants to address the first question. Do I need to repeat them? Or you see him?
I will answer the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In substance. At Airbus, we consider we need three things to be decarbonized in 2050. We need planes that will enable zero emission flight. Second, we need the fuels in 2050 that are zero carbon intensive fuels. That's possible, but it's not aviation that will provide it. So we need alignment with other sectors and with the governments. And the third one is we need a regulation for those planes and a level playing field regulation like we have today with ICAO on safety. We have a worldwide regulation that puts the bar at a certain level for everyone. We need the same, because one risk for us is to have the technologies available, but different regulations around the world, and therefore not the business case to invest for a decarbonized plane that will require a huge amount of investment, but we won't do it for a small country or a small part of the world. We need the worldwide market, because aviation is a small business. Today, we are delivering 1,500 planes a year, or even less in COVID times, where the deliveries of cars is much more. It's 100 million cars. So it's by far more, okay, compared to what we do in aviation. So small business, it's a global business. We need a regulation that forces countries to agree on this regulation in the next years. The plane, the fuel, the regulation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, we're going to wrap up this panel. We need to move on to panel 2. Speakers, panelists, thank you very much for your contribution, and I wish you all the best, and with the recovery, but also with making aviation more sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Okay, we move on to our second session. We are going to switch over to our European Commissioner for Internal Market, Mr. Thierry Breton. And he's really keen to share his thoughts on the state of affairs of Europe aviation and the way forward. And this will be a video that we're going to play.
Ladies and gentlemen, the civil aeronautics industry is absolutely strategic for Europe. It provides high-value jobs and also advanced technologies. It is the backbone of the aerospace and defense ecosystem, representing half of its turnover. Our industry remains a world leader. However, there are no miracles. 30 years of market leadership does not guarantee future success. And things can change very quickly. This industry has been hit very hard by the pandemic. Production rates and deliveries fell by 1/3, consequence of the 70% drop in global air travel. Pre-crisis production rates are unlikely to return for another 4 to 5 years. But the COVID pandemic is not the only challenge. Global competition is increasing. Boeing will recover from the 737 MAX crisis. The trade negotiations that will resume with the US on large civil aircraft will not be easy, we know that. And other countries are pushing hard the development of their industry. Russia wants to preserve its own access to the sky and displays after restructuring its industry, a sustained ambition. As for China, it aims to make its industry world standard, taking advantage of its domestic market, the largest and fastest growing in the world. The first Chinese-built narrow-body aircraft, the Comac C919, will be certified this year. This aircraft remains behind Western products and still relies strongly on Western technologies. However, China will use all means to catch up. For example, as a result of the pandemic, 3 major state-owned airlines put off delivery of 100 aircraft from Boeing and Airbus, but preserved every single order from Comac. To remain competitive, European industry must apply a well-known recipe: stay ahead of the technological race. In the 1980s, Airbus decided to introduce revolutionary technologies on its new A320 family, the fly-by-wire. This breakthrough has been instrumental in making Airbus a world leader within a decade. Today, the green transition offers a similar opportunity to Europe's aeronautics industry. Policies may develop at different pace around the world, but climate change is a global concern. A massive introduction of sustainable aviation fuels, the replacement of old generation aircraft, and the improvement of the air traffic management are necessary to reduce CO2 emissions in the short term. However, these measures are not sufficient to ensure aviation climate neutrality by 2050. This requires changing the concept of aircraft itself. A significant part of the next generation of aircraft must benefit from zero-emission technology. Boosted by Europe's climate ambition, the European industry has announced its intention to take up the challenge and deliver short-range zero CO2 emission aircraft by 2035. Leading on zero-emission aircraft will give a competitive advantage to the European industry. As 80% of the aircraft market is outside of Europe, it will also make Europe a major contributor to the greening of global aviation. However, the market is not yet fully ready for this aircraft, of course. Their disruptive design, in particular the use of hydrogen, requires profound changes in all aspects of the operations, from fuel production and distribution to airport operations and, of course, traffic management. To ensure market readiness by 2035, we need to mobilize all stakeholders to identify all relevant bottlenecks, investments, legislation, standards, technology skills, public acceptance also. The Clean Aviation Partnership will contribute to this exercise by developing and demonstrating hybrid electric and hydrogen-powered aircraft concepts. I believe that even more could be done in a good cooperation to foster the necessary investments, focusing in particular on the production of clean liquid hydrogen and its deployment and, of course, use at airports. We need to bring together energy producers, aircraft manufacturers, airports, airlines, ground services, investors, governmental and institutional partners, civil society organizations, and many, many other stakeholders. We are working on this, and it could take the form of a new industrial alliance. Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that zero-emission aircraft will usher a new era of aviation. They will also contribute to maintaining the leading position of the European industry. I am committed to support European industry in meeting this challenge. Thank you very much for your attention.
Sorry. Thank you very much. That was a good speech of, sorry, I was a little distracted here. Okay, we're moving forward to panel number 3, which is called the European Aviation Competitiveness in a World Market. And our first speaker, our first person that's going to give our 3-minute remarks is Alessandro Profumo. He's CEO of Aerospace and Defense Industry Association of Europe. Mr. Profumo, the floor is yours, please.
Many, many thanks. First of all, dear Minister Rector, dear Member of Parliament Marinescu, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have been asked to talk here today about the difficult mission that European civil aviation must undertake to remain competitive in a world market. Civil aviation is a truly global industry. It is in fact a driver and a symbol of globalization and of social and economic growth. It has been in itself a driver of competitiveness for many sectors, contributing to the creation of those distributed value chains that characterize global businesses, to the development of isolated communities through regional flights, and to the growth of tourism into one of the leading markets worldwide. But civil aviation is not only an industrial sector. We are a complex, interconnected, and multi-character ecosystem with a strong technological competencies and capabilities that we must enhance to stay ahead of our competitors while achieving sustainability, both in terms of environment and markets. Aeronautics is among the world's main players in a number of technological and industrial areas, and our commitment to environmental sustainability is a must on our future. Born from the belief that Europe is leading in the right direction and that sustainability is going to be a key driver of future growth and competitiveness, not only in Europe, but worldwide. But this vision of sustainability will take time to build and will spread across the world with different speed and priorities. And therefore, our industry will need to be able to maintain and improve existing fleets while building the new ones. It will be a challenge within a challenge, and it will be surely last many years. We have also to consider that pandemic has changed entirely the landscape, including the aerospace industry competitive scenario. For instance, some economies will recover faster than others, and some industries will be able to restore their research and development investments level quicker, supported by respective governments, unless European and EU initiatives, including those under the Next Generation EU, can rebalance this situation. Long-term market demand is going to evolve and change globally, not necessarily in a similar way and at the same time. Environmental drivers, for instance, will be applied differently furthermore when we discuss a potential market recovery to pre-crisis volumes. We have just heard 2025. We also know that the demand could be different with more cargo demand, less or no demand for ultra-large aircraft, more regional planes, and so on. To tackle this challenge, we need to cooperate with the institutions, with our supply chain, and with the research sector. We are sure that this cooperation that has been successful over the years of the Clean Sky Partnership will continue to bring fruits within the new Clean Aviation public-private partnership that we are going to establish. Europe needs to maintain its leadership role in aeronautics and needs, therefore, to stay ahead in technology and products, including green and unmanned technologies. To do so, we are planning to invest 3 billion euros in the partnership and will also continue to invest individually in decarbonization, in developing new aircraft, in building innovative engines and systems, in changing the fuels that propel our craft, in the optimization of our air traffic. To help our industry to carry on these investments, we believe our sector should be present in the EU taxonomy, as this will surely play a relevant role to allocate public and private funds to sustainable development and climate protection. The aviation sector is still not included in the taxonomy, but the work in progress, and as I always do, I profit of this opportunity to remind that this is another important goal. Many thanks to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Profumo, for your words. We move on to the second speaker of this panel, and that is Mr. Eduardo Modanato. He's the president of the National Agency for Innovation, and he's actually replacing Mr. Manuel Heitor. Are you there, Mr. Modano?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, good. Please welcome and go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I first have to apologize on behalf of Minister Heitor. He's been caught on the Council of Ministers and it has not finished yet. And therefore, he asked me to step in and deliver a message for him. Thank you very much for your understanding for this unforeseen situation. For us here in Portugal, we believe that Clean Sky is indeed a very important initiative. We have participated in Clean Sky for quite some time, and we believe that the results it has produced over the years speak for themselves, basically, and therefore it is certainly an initiative that deserves to be supported and continued with the new directives and the new ideas that are put forth in sustainable aviation, new generation, and maybe why not hydrogen airplanes or another sustainable fuels, because we know it's a big objective for the industry, for survival of all the planet. So far, of course, we know that aviation is and will be and continue to be run by a small number of large firms. But of course, beyond that, we have a huge number of small SMEs and other smaller industries, together with research institutions and universities, that can provide novelty and solutions for all of us. And this is indeed what we would like to stress as very important for the future of Clean Sky and for the Horizon Europe. That the participation of, we should enlarge, and we have the opportunity to enlarge participation of this wider community, especially now that the new rules for use of structural funds and even the recovery plan funds will allow smaller member states like ours to play a more significant role and even to invest. And so we'd like to see a Clean Sky that is quite open to new participants, new ideas, and of course integrating into the overall objective that is everybody's goal, to come up at the end with a substantial, more environmental friendly aviation sector, dynamic, that once the pandemic is over, and we hope that will be quite soon, although we know that the consequences will last for a couple of years at least, that we can see aviation coming back, and we must be ready. So we have this break, but we must use this break to take advantage of the situation, invest, come up with solutions, and come back stronger than before with much wider degree of participation and significance for, as I said, the small and medium enterprises, the SMEs, together with the rest of the innovation network that is so vibrant around Europe. And so those are the messages that Minister Heitor told me to convey to this group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce the next speaker, which is Mr. Peter Javorcik. He's the Director General of Transport, Energy, Environment, Education. He's the Council of the European Union. Mr. Peter, the floor is yours. 3 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that you got the picture. So to cut the story short a bit in 3 minutes, I think that message from many participants was that currently the air traffic is in rather dire straits. It's clear that the aviation industry is not expected to bounce back immediately. Its recovery will be slower than many other industries. It is expected that even business travel might not recover fully. And there will be further structural changes, and actually pandemic just speed them up. So we have a double challenge ahead of us. We need to relaunch the industry and at the same time go green. And I see three priorities which will lead the way in the coming years for the industry. So it's safety, connectivity, and going green. And our responsibility as legislators at the Euro level, it means the Council of the EU and the Parliament, is to ensure that the industry has a solid legislative framework to face this double challenge. Safety must remain the #1 priority, that's clear. Passengers must travel with peace in mind. Therefore, any work and legislative framework that is set up must keep safety and as a main priority. Connectivity, secondly, to ensure that we connect many places as possible. We also need an air traffic management system that is efficient. Therefore, the so-called single European Sky 2+ regulation that is being currently discussed needs to achieve the goal of beating the capacity crunch that had been hounding the European sky until 2019. As said, there are few years still until we reach the level of traffic than before. And by that time, this capacity crunch must be the thing of the past. And thirdly, going green. It's rather symbolic that while we are having this debate, exactly at the same time, the Leaders' Climate Summit is going on with President Biden announcing return of the US to the Paris Agreement, joining the EU in the global leadership in the climate change policy, which is a very good and important message. But the reduction of emissions will not be achieved just by the political statements or just single miraculous tool. We need to have a set of tools in order to achieve the 90% reduction goal by 2050 for the transport sector. Overall, it's of course climate neutrality. For transport, it's a bit maybe less. So to name some of those tools, work on the SES 2+ regulation, which I already mentioned. It's not about just improving the architecture of the European sky, but also about rendering it more efficient and reducing emissions. It also must be accompanied by proactive approach on alternative fuels. Many things were already said about that. They need necessary investments, and we are expecting that the Commission is going to propose their sustainable aviation fuel legislation soon. It will be then dealt in the Council and in the Parliament. And moreover, we need CORSIA on the global level to ensure commitment from all ICAO members. And finally, the point, the Union should also keep on investing and producing aircraft that is always more and more efficient. We have some good examples, for example, with the A320neo family, but also start or be very active in the development of the new generation or aircrafts based on hydrogen or electric. It's still some way from this later become a reality, but the research and innovation have to start and have to be ongoing already now. Good news is that we have European tools in our hands. Firstly, the Horizon Europe program is close to its adoption. We have this regulation to establish joint undertaking, which is fresh and on our tables, and we should use them in full. Challenge is huge, and we can face it only if we join both the European and national level strategies. So I maybe was a bit pessimistic in the beginning about state of play of aviation, but at the end I would like to be a bit more optimistic and say that even the sky is turbulent now. I'm quite convinced that it will become clearer and cleaner, because it's obvious that people like to and they want to fly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Indeed, people would like to fly. Our next speaker is MAP Marinescu. Are you there by any chance? If then we'll go. He's the member of the European Parliament, and I would like to give him the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I got also video right now. So thank you very much for the invitation. I see that the topic of our panel it's competitiveness. So I shall say something about it. But first of all, I please allow me to say something about a topic that was raised by different speakers before me. It's CES2+. Yes, CES2+, it's in progress, both in Council and in the European Parliament. Today I had the second shadows meeting. I am the rapporteur for CES2+, and tomorrow I shall have another one. In Parliament, I think that we are progressing quite well. And I hope that we shall have a position in the direction proposed by the Commission and in the direction that the speakers here mentioned, which means to have efficiency and to decrease the level of emissions. Unfortunately, in the Council, there is another situation. The member states are trying to go back, even back of the actual situation, not back of the proposal of the Commission. So to go to the national level, so to have the power to decide everything, which means including routes, and that will make a lot difficult our hope that we should arrive, I don't know, between 7 and 10% reduction of emissions. So there is this parallel speech. A lot of entities signed different statements supporting CES2+, but then when it's coming to the time to really discuss about it, they have a totally different position. So about competitiveness, this industry, in this industry, there is a tough competition. For sure, the airlines, they know very well the situation. The competition with especially the companies from Arabic countries is very, very tough. There are a lot of passengers that are coming in Europe through Arabic airports and even through Ankara. This is a problem for our airlines, and it will be more and more difficult because of the future legislation regarding the Green Deal. So we have to take care a lot about this. We have to take measures based on science-based and together accompanied by impact assessments, but not only regarding emissions, but also regarding competitiveness and especially jobs. Otherwise, we shall have, these companies will have big problems. Not now. Now there is a other situation which is also very critical because of pandemic. But when the life will come almost at the normal level, could have other problems. As you have seen, they are speaking about canceling flights up to 500 kilometers, which in my opinion, it's a big mistake. And then other discussions regarding increasing prices and ETS to decrease the number of allowances. And even we are speaking about fuel tax. We are speaking about other measures that could increase the competition. So first of all, as it was said also before, we need an international agreement. CORSIA should go on. Europe should insist a lot to speed up this process, because if these measures will not be taken at the world level, Europe will have big problems in this industry. Maybe we shall have the possibility to answer to the questions, but I want to say only one thing about 500 kilometers. In my opinion, this is not a good measure because not all the member states have high-speed trains. And in my opinion, and of course from statistics, the level of emissions in these flights is much, much less than a long haul flight. And because, in my opinion, this is the place where we can introduce the first zero emission aircraft, as it was also mentioned a lot here. So we can introduce zero emission aircraft, and we may connect the regional airports. So we shall avoid also two-legged flights, and we shall decrease emissions a lot. And for this, if we introduce such a measure, for sure the planes manufacturer will invest in research to build small aircraft with electrical or hydrogen propulsion. So will be not so easy time for the aviation in the future. It's under huge pressure, and we are feeling this pressure, at least in the Trump Committee in the European Parliament, and there will be very tough discussions in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marinescu. Those are hard words, but reality words, I suppose. We're moving to our final panelist, Mrs. Anna Vilate. Are you there? Yes, you are there. And she's Managing Director. I'm sorry, I cut it off, but you're Managing Director of Basque Aerospace Cluster. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Bernice. Good afternoon. I would like to thank to the joint undertaking the opportunity to share with this high-level panel the point of view of a regional cluster such as EGAN, the Basque Aerospace Cluster I represent. In spite of most of the messages already mentioned, I would like to remark the enormous challenge we face to get out of the crisis, responding to the commitments acquired in the fight against climate change by this sector and society in general, that will mean to reach neutral emissions by 2050. Meanwhile, our supply chain has to face short-term challenges accelerated because of the pandemic, the resizing of the supply chain, changes in the production cadences of aircraft programs, the accelerated incorporation of new technologies, the retention of the talent, with a drop in sales around 60%. These challenges are not easy to achieve without the help of all the stakeholders, public administrations, large companies, agencies as the clusters, and why not, the understanding of society. We cannot stop suddenly traveling by plane because the planes pollute. We must be able to transmit a message of calm and criticism when evaluating traveling by plane or deciding by other transport. There are a lot of inputs to take into account when we calculate the emissions that a person generates traveling by plane compared with other transports. These are not only measuring emissions at the point of operation and not adding the emissions throughout the entire cycle, manufacturing, commission of infrastructures, power generation, or recycling some components as batteries. Let's be serious, please, and ask our politicians to be. And please help our SMEs not to lose their knowledge, their capabilities, and above all, their people, so they can be adapted to the next future and not be lost. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you all would just come on board and then turn on your microphones so we can see all of you. And we'll continue with our Q&A. There will be a few questions from me and then from the audience, from all the people that are watching it remotely. Okay. Well, there's a lot of said about competitiveness and a lot of said about public policy because we have some people that can speak directly to that topic. Let's start with that first question. The support of the public policies, we've heard it throughout the afternoon. It's extremely important. We need to get the support from the EU. We need to get the support from everybody that has an important role to play. So how can we secure sufficient EU support and a stable, long-term framework to enable the sector to come up with the right technologies? Who wants to tackle that one?
May I start?
Sure.
First of all, many thanks for the question. I think that it's incredibly important to have a very good coordination because as we heard, we are talking of many different segments of the industry. There is the production, there are the infrastructure, there are the production of new fuels, new engines. There is the production of new system for air traffic management. So the coordination, which can be done by the authorities, I think is incredibly important. Clearly, this is one of the key roles, and we thank the Commission for this view. And then clearly we must have a long-term industrial view, both from the public entities and from the industrial sector. As industry, and ISD clearly is very involved in that, we are ready to be part of this discussion in order to have a coordinated view on the future. I'm sure that in this way we can create investment plan that will be fulfilled.
And may I then ask you, do you see that particularly a European view or a global view? Because that's could be a different.
I think that we need a global view, but since it's impossible to ask for a global governance since the beginning, if as Europe will be coordinated with a common strong view, for sure we will influence the global.
Oops, we lost you. You still there? He froze us. Okay, so, we'll come back to you.
May I?
Yes, you go ahead.
So you are asking for what we are thinking about the support for this industry?
The public policies, yes. How do we make sure that?
Policies.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
We are here.
That it's long term.
Yes, we are here to event organized by Clean Sky. This could be one of the support for this industry, because this is in this period of time, it's very clear that we need research and innovation, a lot of innovation. If we want to fulfill the requirements of Green Deal and digitalization, we need research. And this is Clean Sky, it's the place where we can, they can do this. But I think that with the budget that was allocated by the European Commission, they will not be able to do everything they need. So, in my opinion, should be a higher budget. And I think that, you know, Parliament was fighting a lot to increase the budget in Horizon. And Horizon EU, we succeeded to take some money, not at the level that we wanted. So I think that for this joint undertakings, maybe not for all of them, because some of them are not so efficient, but for this, for example, for Clean Sky, there is enough money to be allocated to this. And this is European level. And at the global level, I repeat again, we need CORSIA. So we need EU voice to be there very strong, and we need an international agreement in order to provide competitiveness, a playing field for competition. Otherwise, it will be a big problem.
Right. Anyone else who would like to comment on that?
Yeah, may I come in as well? Yeah, please. Yeah. I very much agree with the previous speaker when he said that the joint undertaking is quite a good and very concrete example of the support for the industry at the EU level. We have quite a bit window of opportunity now, because Horizon, the new generation of this program, was just adopted. There is much more money in the pot as well for next 7 years, comparing to the previous period. And also beyond that, it's not just about Horizon. There are new tools in the whole new EU generation, next generation EU funds. You know the story about the 750 billion. Most of it will go through the recovery funds back to the member states. And also it's very much up to them now to organize themselves and to allocate the fresh money to the future policies, and definitely research innovation linked to the green goals is one of them. And here I would also stress the importance that there is a synergy and a very good link between what's going on at the national and the European level. So there was a question about the global and European, but I would stress that even more important is how we organize ourselves between the EU and national level. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Someone else like to respond to that first question?
Can I?
Two more speakers?
Can I?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Just to exactly follow up on the last idea, because I think, of course, there's the global discussion, but I think within Europe, there is a good opportunity now to have dialogue between Clean Sky and the various national governments to come up with plans that focus on the same idea and concentrate rather than diverge. And therefore, of course, the competition for funding is immense because national countries also have their own internal competition for funding. Therefore, the best ideas will always win at the end, and there is not enough money for everybody. So coming up with good plans and good protocols of cooperation between, for example, Clean Sky and different member states, and Clean Sky has done that before. I remember in quite a few years ago, there was already a protocol of understanding for supporting mutual interesting ideas between Clean Sky and several member states, including Portugal. I would certainly encourage stronger dialogue between Clean Sky and different member states so that at the end, we end up with programs that can bring in synergies and go towards the very end in a much deeper cooperation. And in that respect, we can involve all the participants in the innovation cycle, not just from the large industry to smaller industries, SMEs, and all the academia and all the innovation ecosystem. And I think that is the key to mobilize the various fundings that were just mentioned, because as you know, competition will be there, the best ideas will win. Hopefully aviation will be one of them. Thank you.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the second question then. Well, we already touched on it. It's about competitiveness. How can the European aviation sector remain a world leader while actually being sustainable? Is that possible?
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I think this is the key, because being more sustainable is exactly the best way for being more competitive. Using environment-friendly aircrafts is becoming more and more a marketing and sales advantage, and not only. This is the best way to get the planet we want. Besides, everybody knows that sustainability involves innovation in technologies, but not only, also in practices and processes. And so our supply chain has the challenge to adapt the new technologies, not only in the final product, but during all the cycle. This is the concept of the circular economy. Therefore, digitalization must be reinforced to improve industrial competitiveness. Example in my region is the strategy of intelligence industry promoted by the Basque government that includes specific programs supporting SMEs in fields such as cyber security, digitalization in processes, development of new business models, and others. Think research and development must also be accelerated on the electrification, of course, of aviation, another way of propulsion as biofuel and hydrogens. And besides, a new initiative as the European Innovation Council calls and the Green Deal can be a driver for European aviation becoming a leader globally.
Okay. Yeah, those are good examples. So we're going to the questions from the audience. The first one is, we heard from panel one that the time is of the essence towards climate neutrality. When can we expect clean aviation to start? Anyone? Of course, when you need to have a crystal ball for that, right?
Yeah. May I say one word? Yes. I think that aviation is clean. In this moment, yes, we use the aviation for our mobility and connectivity, and I think it's clean. Now, if we are speaking about aviation without emission or zero emission, this is another story. You may take it as a joke, but in my opinion, aviation is clean. So maybe you can say sustainable aviation. So I think, as I said, that if it will be investment in small aircraft, which means, I don't know, 20, 30 seats to be used for short distances, this will come very quickly. This could come very quickly in aviation, which means not tomorrow, but in some years, because to design, to build, and to certify the plane, you need some time. Yeah, and for the others, in my opinion, 2035, as it was discussed here for zero emission aircraft, long distance, maybe it's a little bit too early. But I hope that our engineers will be able to do this very soon. Anyway, 2050 neutral, I think that it is possible to be done.
Okay, 2000 sorry, what did you say? 2000
2050 as neutral.
50, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You think that's doable? Okay. Yeah. Well, we can start taking bets and meet again in 12 years and see where we're at. Mr. Profumo, do you have any insights in that? What is your bet? Clean aviation.
I think that we have to build up a very clear way to go. First of all, for instance, I'm not an engineer. We are working a lot with engineers in our company. And for instance, they feel that hybrid will come by far before than hydrogen on aircraft. So to have a common view could be useful because clearly to have a very high ambition is always important because this press all of us towards innovation. But we know perfectly that hydrogen do have many problems, for instance, in terms of security. So at the end, the weight of the aircraft in order to be secure could be higher than the existing one. So it's not necessarily is so easy to manage that. So I think that 2035 for hybrid aircraft, regional aircraft is really something that we must have as a target. And is very important. We are already working on that with Airbus on ATR, so is clearly a key target. On hydrogen, we feel that this life cycle will be longer. Having said that, there are other areas in which we can support sustainability. Fuels and engines is important, but for instance, the training of pilots via simulation and so on and so forth, then we know that can create some other issue, but is very important in order to reduce the number of flights for training. So there are many areas on which we have to invest. Finally, as I said, the infrastructure will be very, very important. The use of other transport system for short travels, train or mainly train, I think is also a key element because we must have a look of transport as a whole activity, not only aircraft and similar system.
Okay, thank you. Is there another question from the audience? If not, then I'm going to ask you another question. It's about the aviation quality supply chain. So how do we support the strategic assets for the sector, particularly research organizations and universities? I mean, how are we going to make sure that they get what they need in order to move towards that target of 2035?
May I come in on that?
Yes, that's a good good answer for you, I guess.
That's exactly one of our priorities is
yes.
to enlarge, as I said already at the beginning, to enlarge the community that is directly involved in the clean aviation research and innovation for the next for this next financing cycle. So Horizon Europe and all the others that already mentioned before. Next Generation EU, the recovery plan, etc. So there is a lot of money right now available, and the universities, I think universities, research centers, small firms that can think out of the box, and I've seen some comments in the chat asking exactly for that. I think there should be an enlarged dialogue between the different parties, and so I would see as very helpful an easier way for smaller organizations, namely universities, also research centers and SMEs, to be able to access the fora where, for example, Clean Sky could be the center, the node, but we should bring in those ideas, facilitate. On the member states level, we can, and we are willing to do so with what we call mobilizing programs to help our research centers and SMEs to become more active, as long, of course, that they can integrate into those supply chains for the large manufacturers that are the integrators of all the ideas at the end. Because we're definitely not going to create a brand new aircraft or engine or whatever from the competition. So right. I believe that we really need to enlarge the system so that we can bring the best of all the competencies in Europe, and we are 27 member states. We should use them all. Thank you.
Okay. Anna Vilate, do you agree? Is there a lot of opportunity after we come out of this pandemic with flying at an ultimate low? Maybe the interest is somewhere else. What is your experience?
I think it's a challenge and an opportunity, but it's not easy for the SMEs. Okay. In the case, for example, for the research bodies and university, the programs like Horizon Europe or Clean Aviation and other funding in Europe are expected to support them to continue their work under the R&D projects and help the sector to be competitive. In the case of the SMEs, I think because of the pandemic, now we need to put the priority in the survival of the SMEs. I think they have problems with the people. They maybe can have a lack of qualified technical experts. Are not easy to re-educate, and it's a problem to lose this experience. And in the other hand, maybe a solution or one of the solutions can be a consolidation inside the SMEs may also help them to support their sustainability. And it's important they keep the quality, the on-time delivery and the quality for the customers. But it's not easy in this moment because of the lack of turnover.
Okay, thanks. I have another question from our audience. Is there a date for the first call for participation under the new partnership Clean Aviation?
Somebody from Clean Sky. I don't know if it's they have already a program.
Don't say 2035.
No. I'm sure that it is earlier. For the moment, the regulation is still in work. The regulation, the decision of the council. So the parliament will give an opinion somewhere in the end of May. I don't know what is the state of play of preparation in the Clean Sky, because they could prepare the things before.
Yeah, what I can add as well, that the proposal just landed on our desks and tables here. It's being discussed also among the member states, so I believe that it will be adopted soon. But of course, then the real work starts on the concrete projects, and that's rather the question for the Clean Sky itself.
Okay, any other comments? No more questions?
Just from the Portuguese presidency right now, that the information that we have is that indeed I can confirm that the intention is to have most of the final act approved in Clean Sky and the other partnerships ready by the end of our presidency. And so the formal things should be ready early in the second semester of this year. And from then on, it's up to Clean Sky to really, I think, likely we could still have a first call this year. Why not?
From the industry side, the only comment is the sooner the better.
I think we can all agree with that. The sooner the better. And the pandemic, of course, is a major setback, but we need to look forward in how to come out as very green. So I want to thank all of you for participating and for your insights and your time. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'm taking you for a brief insight into the Clean Sky 2 online exhibit. Just discover European innovative technologies for green aviation and reduce carbon emissions. Let's take a look together.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sébastien Dubois, the head of the Clean Sky 2 program, and I have the great honor to moderate this panel discussion this afternoon. I would like to start off this discussion with a few brief words about our results to date in the Clean Sky 2 program. The online stand, as you just saw a minute ago, exhibits in a virtual manner some of our key demonstrators that are currently being developed under the Clean Sky 2 program. These demonstrators feature the following aspects: the novel aircraft configuration, the propulsion systems, the major aircraft components, the system integration onto an aircraft, and the aero performance analysis. All of this is the raison d'être of the Clean Sky 2 program and the secret to our success that exists between our participating entities. I would like to encourage you to visit this stand, and I expect that you will enjoy what we have achieved to date. During this panel discussion, you will have the opportunity to raise your questions via the chat box to the panelists. And we'll try to pick up some of the questions to address them at the end of this panel discussion. Let's now move to the panel discussion with leading representatives from both the industry and the research establishment. I am delighted and honored to be joined on our virtual stage today by Grazia Vittadini, CTO of Airbus, Stéphane Cueil, Clean Sky 2, Chairman of the Clean Sky 2 Governing Board and CTO of Safran, Francis Carla, CTO of Lipper, Anke Kaitzer-Pizzala, Chair of the Executive Board of DLR, and Paul Stein, CTO of Rolls-Royce. Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome and many thanks for participating in this panel discussion. This panel will deal with leading innovation for sustainable aviation. I would like to ask for the views of our panelists concerning Clean Sky 2 program and its expected outcomes, and the transition to the Clean Aviation Partnership, and how to reach climate neutrality for aviation by 2050. Before we get into this discussion, it would be great to start with short opening statements by each of you. May I ask you, Grazia Vittadini, to open the floor, please?
With great pleasure. Thank you for the warm welcome, Sébastien, and congratulations for the extraordinary virtual Clean Sky 2 exhibition. And of course, good day, distinguished guests and colleagues. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to connect virtually with all of you, the global aerospace community. Now, we've heard in the previous panels about the challenges facing Europe as we do usher in a sustainable recovery, a recovery which places our environment in harmony with our economy. And this challenge is not something exclusive to Europe. I dare say it's a planetary challenge. Let's not forget, today is Mother Earth Day. And incidentally, we have just heard President Biden declare the US pledged to cut its greenhouse gas emissions in half 2030 and achieve. Now, ladies and gentlemen, all our agendas are connected. And now achieving our common goal to decarbonize our planet is paramount. It's necessary, it's urgent, but above all, it's possible. So what's the role of our industry in this? Well, air travel is a vital lifeline for economy, for society, and against the current background for global recovery. Measured in value, 1/3 of global trade and 2/3 of global tourists are transported there. Air transport supports 65.5 million jobs and $2.7 trillion in economic activities. Now, this said, this lifeline can only remain vital if acting in a sustainable and healthy way. And this is why we've jointly committed to the goal to cut today's CO2 emissions by half until 2050. That is compared to 2005, right? This goal is undisputed. Now, the big question is rather how? How are we going to achieve it? Well, for once, we have to accelerate our commitment to maturing technologies and really harnessing new solutions for alternative propulsion. Why? Because our ambitious targets just cannot be achieved if we continue harnessing on our existing aircraft technologies. Now, there's two technology pathways standing out. The first is certainly hydrogen, holding the potential to cut in-flight CO2 emissions entirely, one shot, quite futuristic. And that's why our intent at Airbus is to really bring an emissions-free aircraft concept to market by 2035. That's what we call Zero-E. That's our initiative. However, today's available hydrogen technologies limit its application to short possibly medium range aircraft. What about the long haul market? Well, sustainable aviation fuels, that's the most viable solution we see. And recent studies demonstrate that there's enough raw materials out there globally to produce 500 million tons of SAF each year. And that's enough to replace completely kerosene by 2050. What is the current problem though? Scaling production and uptake. This is why, together with Paul and Stefan, also on the panel with me today, we have proposed the creation of a European SAF Alliance to enable, in fact, a scale of change large enough. We need to champion collaboration between science, industry, OEM, suppliers, airlines, airports, the energy sector, the regulatory bodies, and of course, the European Clean Sky 2 program and the future Clean Aviation Partnership. They provide an excellent platforms for all of us to unite. Let me recap quickly. Air travel is a prerequisite for global recovery, but recovery needs to be sustainable. That's why aviation's ambition is zero emissions. This is our common responsibility, our common opportunity to continue pioneering the future. And I look very much forward to our discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grazia, for these incoming statements and probably more to discuss later on. I would like to continue with the second speaker. Stefan, please, can you go next?
Okay, my video. Hello, Sébastien. Good to see you. And thank you to Grazia for this, as always, inspiring introduction. I must say I share 100% of what she said, so the challenge is to say something different. So I'm going to take a look back at Clean Sky and from that try to tell you where we are heading now. So Clean Sky has been operating now for more than a decade, and we can be proud of the progress made during this decade. Together, we have created a powerful ecosystem and a community of aviation research and innovation across Europe with large companies, SMEs, research organizations, and universities working hand in hand with the public sector. Together, we have delivered remarkable results. One particularly close to my heart is the open rotor demonstrator in Clean Sky 1, but there are many others as you could see on the virtual show for Clean Sky 2. Now, deep in the mire of the worst crisis ever, this ecosystem is still standing, fully united behind a shared vision. Decarbonizing aviation by 2050 is possible, and the next research program, Clean Aviation, is going to be key to achieve it. This ambition is fully reflected in the Strategic and Research Innovation Agenda released in July 2020. It is impact-driven with 3 clear focused pillars: ultra-efficient short, medium-range aircraft, hybrid electric regional, and hydrogen. And the aim is to pave the way for the introduction of highly innovative aircraft entering into service by 2035. These new aircraft will be the core element of the net zero trajectory for aviation, along with the necessary complementary effort required outside of Clean Aviation to unleash the potential of SAF. As Grazia said, we need a massive ramp up for regulation and infrastructures, and also improving ATM through initiatives such as the Single European Sky. As a world leader in propulsion, electrical technologies and equipment, we at Safran are fully supporting the 3 pillars of the 3R, which are perfectly aligned with our strategy. A lot of work is still ahead before starting the program. The regulation, the Single Basic Act, is being discussed, and it still includes several concerns for the private side, which need to be solved. First of all, the budget, which is currently 25% below industry's proposal, but also representation and governance. One specific challenge is to secure impact, which requires consistency, continuity, and structure, while at the same time running with a more flexible and open framework based on open code. We have, in essence, to reinvent the PPP to be able to do so. What we are now looking at is designing roadmaps, which will be a key element to define the future work program and open calls, and then steer and reorientate when needed. A last word about synergies. We are ready for it, and it is certainly necessary when you look at the extent of the effort we need to deliver. In Clean Sky 2, the joint undertaking anticipated by putting in place several MOUs with regions in EU. However, if we really want to go further, we need to have the mechanisms to do so. With current regulations, there are complementarities, but no real synergies. Support from EC to overcome difficulties in aligning various instruments is going to be key. Overall, I am very positive. If we pull together private sector, public sector, and run the extra mile together, we will have all the cards in hand to make history. Be leaders in Europe of decarbonized aviation, and as Grazia said, keep alive the dream of flying by making it sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stéphane, for these very nice incoming words. I propose to continue with Francis Carla, CTO of Liber. Francis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sebastian. Good afternoon, and very pleased to contribute to this event. The Liber Group is a multi-sector group with 11 different product divisions. Most of these 11 divisions are facing now the challenge we are discussing this afternoon, the challenge of the energy fuel change for a better environmental footprint. It is also obviously a major direction of the aerospace division of Liber to commit to a more sustainable environment. The aerospace division at Liber includes 3 different system product lines: landing gear, flight control, and air management system. It has been repeated several times today. There will be a change for propulsion fuel in the future. Whatever this change will be, sustainable fuel, hydrogen, fuel cell, or hybrid solution. At system level, there is a clear trend to reduce the energy consumption for systems. More electrification is one direction, and this will happen on our 3 system product line. However, for one product line, the air management system, this change will be bigger. As of today, you probably know that the air needed to pressurize the cabin is taken from the engine through what we call the bleed air system. New generation engines are more and more sensitive to this bleed offtake. And of course, this bleed flow extraction will have to be limited to a minimum, or most likely to be totally removed in more electrical application. In both cases, this will aim at reducing the energy consumption for the aircraft. And that's why we are preparing this at Liber for about 20 years. This preparation has been supported with different national and European projects, including the latest one, Clean Sky 2, with for Liber a major success with the flight demonstration on our new electrical air conditioning and pressurization system on an Airbus 320. Now, concerning the challenges we will have to face in the future. The first challenge linked to the alternative of hydrogen combustion or hydrogen fuel cell power aircraft is to provide electrical power for the aircraft system. And this is the reason why we have decided at Liber to invest in fuel cell system, taking benefit of what we learn on this system in other sectors like the automotive. The second challenge we foresee for the new generation of aircraft is the thermal management. Thermal management will be key on all new aircraft, either going more electrical or working with hydrogen combustion or fuel cell energy. More electrical load to be dissipated. And the last challenge will be the combination of the two previous ones, meaning power and thermal management at the same moment. This power and thermal management challenge is today still underestimated and will be essential for next generation aircraft. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis, for the nice introduction and a lot to discuss afterwards about the future challenges. Let's now go on with Anke Kaiser-Pizzala, Chair of the Executive Board of DLR. Anke, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think a lot has been said already about our joint responsibility for sustainable and energy efficient aircraft and for developing the next generations. DLR as a research organization is fully concentrating on this challenge together with our sister organizations and the framework of the European Research Establishment on Aeronautics. And we have been vital partners to the Clean Sky projects, and we and our sister organizations are going to continue to do so. What we bring into Clean Sky and what our essential part is in developing the next generation of aircraft, in fact, is that we go from very fundamental science and very creative ideas all the way with applied science to come to innovation. So I think we're a vital part of the innovation chain. And that is, of course, the role of research associations and also of the universities. And the Clean Sky so far, let me just give you one example, which from my point of view is particularly important and which highlights one of the facets of us as research organizations. So what we have been doing is we have taken the results of a number of Clean Sky projects and we have put them into virtual aircraft products. And these virtual aircraft products play an important part in determining the efficiency and the performance of individual future aircraft and also of complete fleets. This has been assessed very positive by our partners from industry and in the whole Clean Sky community. And what I think we bring also additional experience is from our cross-sector expertise. For instance, DLR brings unique expertise, in fact, from our programs also in energy research and traffic research, and of course, also in space research. This, for instance, concerns sustainable aviation fuels. We have already heard that there is a huge demand and making sure that there is enough fuel at a good price. And let me add to that, there's also the demand that these fuels, even in future, are going to be better with respect to the emission of soot and with respect then to the formation of clouds. And that has been, for example, also done right now and is done right now. And I've heard with very positive results in a new campaign where we partner with Airbus and we partner with Neste in order to determine the emission of an Airbus in flight. And that's really what makes the aeronautics research establishment special, is that we really can partner with industry because of our deep knowledge in aeronautics. And then bringing in additionally our knowledge in energy, we can also now be a very crucial partner in the development and in the upscaling with respect to sustainable aviation fuels. Another aspect, I think, is of course the field of batteries, where we can benefit from the experience we have in the traffic sector, as well as, of course, hydrogen. And in hydrogen, our knowledge in the production and the handling from the space sector, I think, is going to really benefit aeronautics. So I think all the research establishments from the member states, together with industry, are going to be doing essentially all that's really needed for the future of the aircraft industry, and where we are independent partners, and that's benefiting both the private and also the public sector. And I think this role is something we are really, all of us, keen to do in future, and the Clean Sky Partnership.
Danke for these incoming words. And I propose to give the floor to our last panelist, Paul Stein, CTO of Rolls-Royce.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, and it's a pleasure to join you today, and really enjoyed listening to the other panelists there. And I'll probably say some things that echo what they say. We do need innovation, absolutely. We need to innovate, innovate, innovate. We also need pace, we need some focus, and we need at some point to start to move to agreement on the pathways that we're taking to net zero, because the fueling and charging infrastructure and all the supply chains that supply our industry have to have time to ramp up as well. I think we also need to be careful that the bulk of what we research into over this coming period can have a substantial net zero impact by 2050. Many nations are already starting to sign up to very aggressive decarbonisation targets. And I think the view of many is that aviation cannot stand out as special and will have to itself reach net zero globally by 2050. We believe, like others, and I think Stefan made this point already, that with the flying element, the three pillars that we call them of aviation decarbonisation still stand. We still need a substantial improvement in airframe engine combinations. I'll talk a bit about what we're doing as a company in a while. And some people say, well, why do you need such significant increases in airframe engine efficiency? And one of the reasons is that SAFs, which we're going to need in bulk, will be more expensive than fossil fuels. Digging fossils out of the ground and burning them in Jet A has actually been a very cost-effective thing to do, which is why SAFs are not ramped up to date. So to enable SAF ramp up, not only we need the measures that have been talked about earlier, such as the EU Refuel Initiative and the EU SAF Alliance that Grazia quite rightly referred to, we also need to make engines and airframes ever more efficient. The SAF ramp up has been spoken of many times, and I think we're almost in danger of underestimating just how big a task this is. One major oil and gas company estimated to produce that 500 million tons that Grazia referred to will involve $4 trillion of invested capital between now and 2050. So this is a massive, massive industry that needs to grow and support our industry in aviation, and we must work with them hand in hand on the technology and on the regulatory conditions to make it happen. And then the third pillar are all the novel technologies which we're exploring. All very exciting things. Some are connected with net zero, but some also are connected with a new era of aviation. And it's quite interesting that some of the pure electric solutions that we're involved with right now are just as much about lowering the cost of ownership for airlines as much as creating a net zero footprint. So that's really exciting stuff. And for example, the use of fixed wing pure electric for connecting city pairs together will be a reality by the middle of this decade. So really exciting time for aviation. On these three pillars though, on the airframe engine combination, on SAFs and on the novel technologies, it's certainly our belief that those first two, the airframe engine and SAFs, that in the 2050 timeframe are going to be a minimum of 60% and as much as 90% of decarbonising aviation. And for that reason, it's very important that we focus our efforts in the right way. But as I said to you, I'm not in any way diminishing the value of new technology, nor of those third generation applications, which are very exciting and brilliant for other reasons. So this is a great time for aviation as we build back better post-COVID. And it's a time where we have to collaborate and where there's a clear role for Clean Aviation in acting as a premier convening body for bringing all our concepts and innovation together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for this nice introduction to this panel discussion. I would like to invite all our panelists to open their mic to start the discussion all together. And my first question will be to Grazia. You have mentioned in your opening words that you are evaluating a number of technologies and harnessing several solutions. Can you tell us what flagship innovation we can expect to be delivered in Clean Sky 2 program?
Well, yes, of course. Clean Sky 2, let's not forget, was a technology-driven program focusing on very significant improvements for all major aircraft components. Well, on Airbus side, we're expecting really exceptional progress on several initiatives in the next 2 years to come to the conclusion and wrap up of Clean Sky. Let me just outline a few. The integrated fuselage demonstrator to demonstrate how materials, design, production of fuselage and cabin can be better integrated and industrialized. More specifically, ramping up the co-design efforts between engineering, manufacturing, so that, for instance, installation of the cabin during the industrialization phase is streamlined, is more efficient. We have in the pipe an enhanced cockpit demonstrator for single pilot operation technologies. On the helicopter side, well, of course, the high-speed helicopter demonstrator, that's our racer. We have first flight coming up, scheduled in 2022, so stay tuned. We're, of course, engaged also on the defense and space side with a regional flagship demonstrator, the flight test bed number 2. It's already undergone structural modifications and started the ground testing. And we're going to be very busy on it until certainly Q4 2021. But we're also, of course, looking forward to Clean Aviation. Looking ahead, that's going to be essential for us to build on the results of Clean Sky 2, further integrate, accelerate, and really bring it all up a notch to even a more disruptive level of technologies.
Very much, Grazia. It's a quite appealing time for Clean Sky 2, and we expect to see soon, in fact, a lot of results coming and linking this to the preparation of the Clean Aviation Partnership. Francis, I would like to continue with you in the field of energy. You mentioned several solutions which are at stake and for which the development have been initiated some years ago. My first question is more to understand how much time do we need to deploy fully that solutions onto an aircraft, and what kind of other disruptive solutions we can expect to meet the climate neutrality objectives for aviation by 2050?
Oh, yeah. We know our technology and development cycle in aeronautics are long cycle, and the lead time from innovation to product implementation is taking many years. Let's take a concrete example to illustrate that with what we did at Liebherr during the development of our innovative solution for electrical air system. In fact, we started this journey in January 2002. Starting point was a new European program called POA, for those who remember, Power Optimized Aircraft, where we trade all the potential electrical system architecture. Then we selected the most effective one, we developed the key technologies, the key component, and finally, we have performed flight tests of the complete system in June 2016. This means it took us around 15 years to reach TRL6 and the successful flight test demonstration on the 320 into Clean Sky 2. These 15 years are not accounting for the additional effort for maturity that we need to implement on top of this. Knowing that maturity means very clearly product and system maturity to introduce this product without risk into an industrial program and into service with single A production ramp-up scenario. These efforts to mature product are as important as technology development and are also quite long. However, and being positive, we know that there are a lot of potential improvement that we can draw inside our technology development. One strong way to accelerate this development cycle is to introduce at very early stage system engineering modeling. I say model-based engineering, which is obvious for technology development, but I should reinforce that with model-based manufacturing and servicing for maturity. All the three are contributing to product maturity demonstration. Full model-based engineering with manufacturing, with service twin, with digital continuity will be a key factor to accelerate time to entry into service, especially when we are talking disruptive technology. On the Liber side, this is exactly what we will apply for our next disruptive innovation in the fuel cell domain. First demonstration we could contribute to within the Clean Aviation program would be high power fuel cell solution for which we can provide the air compression to supply the stack. Basic air compressor technology are already available and can be incremented to high power fuel cell. The second one would be to demonstrate the system feasibility to use fuel cell for generating power for all non-propulsive systems. And the last one, but not least, would be to contribute with the airframers to the challenge of the energy and thermal management I mentioned before that will be key for hydrogen combustion and hydrogen fuel cell technology.
For this nice explanation, we understand better, in fact, why we need to invest ahead, in fact, of program development and why it's taking time before we can see and harvest the benefits of such a development. Paul, I would like to continue with you. In the Clean Sky 2 program, Rolls-Royce prepared the future propulsion systems and the new electrification architectures for the next generation of aircraft. Can you please tell us what flagship innovation we can expect to be delivered in the Clean Sky 2 program? And how will this activity contribute to the climate neutrality challenges by 2050?
So thanks for the question, Sebastian. And Clean Sky 2 has been a very successful collaboration for us and for Europe. I'll pick three examples out that came out of it. One is our flagship UltraFan program. So UltraFan is an ultra-high bypass ratio engine for middle of the market up to very large long-haul engines. And its contribution to net zero is a step change in fuel efficiency, another 10% fuel efficiency when integrated with the airframe on those wide-bodied aircraft. And as I said before, we think that's an absolutely essential component in closing the affordability gap on SAFs. In fact, just to give sort of one little bit of maths, if as an example, in Europe, we decide to go for a 15% blend mandate for SAFs by 2035, just as an example. And if SAFs were twice the price of fossils, then UltraFan closes the affordability gap between SAFs and fossil fuel today. So it's a very important part of the operating costs of making the journey to net zero economical as well as practical. The second example I'll give might surprise you. It's eFan-X, which many people will know. Grazia and I decided not to proceed to a flight test program, and people think, oh, that meant it was cancelled. Actually, all we did was not take it through to flight test. The project has carried on work in a copper bird configuration on the ground, and the generator, in fact, is now running up at full speed. And it's Europe has easily the world's most compact 2.5 megawatt turbo generator, which opens up a world of serious hybrid designs. And that turbo generator can be powered by hydrogen or powered by SAFs. The beauty of a turbo generator configuration is it's a controlled combustion environment and is far more tolerant of whatever fuel type you want to put through it. So that really is a proud step towards our net zero. And then the third, rather than one specific program that came out of Clean Sky had just been a terrific convening forum for small companies and large companies to meet together and innovate around the edges. And out of that has come a number of pure electric configurations. And as I said before, I don't think we should underestimate the power of these, because people will see these flying in maybe 5 years' time. I mean, some of the operators want to get these fixed-wing pure electric into service in 2026. And that's going to be inspirational for aviation, even though it won't be at this stage, decarbonizing the larger jets. Younger people will see these aircraft very quiet, very different, and be inspired. and politicians can look at these aircraft as aviation doing its bit. So I think it's really important from a messaging perspective as well as a sort of human mobility and connecting cities. So those are the three things I pull out of Clean Sky 2. We're proud of all of them. We should all be proud of all of them.
Thank you very much, Paul. And indeed, inspiring people for the future generation of aircraft is key to have the most brilliant scientists to support us in that journey. Stéphane, Safran is a key system supplier, providing a wide range of equipment such as electrical systems, fuel systems, and propulsion systems. Which step in terms of technology development need to be taken to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 within the new partnership for clean aviation?
Yes, thank you very much, Sébastien. So basically, we have three pillars in our strategy. The first one is the most important. It's really the next generation of ultra-efficient aircraft. So we need to support the airframers, our customers, with technologies to achieve a minus 30% reduction of fuel burn on a future short, medium range aircraft, which is the target of pillar one of clean aviation. And so to do that, our contribution is going to be first and foremost about the engine. So we are really harvesting all the knowledge delivered through Clean Sky 1 and Clean Sky 2 to prepare the best of the best, which will be an engine able to deliver minus 20% fuel burn reduction. So it's a key element. It's a disruptive one. It takes some integration, but we are really pushing for it. And all the rest of the equipment and structure will need to support the effort too. And a big challenge is going to be about weight saving. So we need to shave weight across the board. And technologies such as 3D printing, for instance, offer a lot of benefits on hydraulic equipment, electrical equipment. So we intend to make some step changes in weight, including in the cabin. And of course, improve the electrical systems, which are going to be even more important in the next generation. So that's the first pillar. Second pillar is about new fuels. We need to remove all barriers to SAF and open the possibility for hydrogen, which will be for small range, medium range. It's the beginning, but we need to make every avenue possible. So it's about the current fuel system, materials, pumps, make it compatible to a wide range of SAF 100%. And finally, as Paul said, we have new avenues down the range of the applications, general aviation, commuters, where we can move to disruptive propulsion solutions about full electric, hybrid, fuel cells. So we are working on all of that, from general aviation to commuters, fuel electric, batteries, electrical motors. Fuel cells need to move to 1 megawatt, support commuters. So we are looking at all of that. And as said, it's not going to be the main lever for the net zero commercial aviation into a 50, but it's opening possibilities. And it's part of the dream, and it's a disruptive path for the long term. So all of that, as you can see, it's perfectly the three pillars of clean aviation. So I was not lying before.
A lot of challenges ahead of us and a lot of effort to prepare that roadmap and to launch the first call soon. As we have heard before, there are people are eager to step in that new venture and journey. Anke, I would like to raise the next question to you. DLR is the largest engineering and scientific research institution for aeronautics and space in Europe. What are the main challenges for research organization to support the future challenges towards carbon neutrality by 2050?
Yeah, actually, I think technologically, of course, we work on the same challenges as industry, and we have heard a lot about challenges and the propulsion systems already, and of course, there are many challenges when it comes to new materials and when it, of course, comes also to new aircraft design. And that, of course, is also flight physics. And another thing, of course, is going to be the question of optimal flight path. So that's also a number of components that come to the whole system and the complex system of energy efficient and clean aviation. And of course, I think another aspect we have to keep in mind while I'm looking at the green aircraft is also the question of noise. So all that is a complex system. What we bring in is our knowledge from aerospace and very often also our knowledge from other areas. And it's really important for us in order to bring up the speed that's required by industry to get all these competences together as quickly as possible. And I think the other major challenge is to use digitalization and to use the virtual twins, to use the virtual products and all these kind of systems in order to accelerate development. And there it's also going to be a major challenge for us to use the right infrastructure to quickly proceed from fundamental research to applied research and to come to those prototypes and to those TOL levels industry really needs. So we really have to keep up with our research infrastructure. We have to further develop that. We have to go for demonstrators, because I think demonstrators is really something that's now needed to bring all these innovations quickly with industry into the products. And that's what people really need. And I think that's also the really exciting part. And there's a lot to do also in the aspect, in the areas of course, verification and certification. And that's also something we work on. So there's a lot to do, and it's an exciting time.
Thank you very much, Anke. Part of my frustration is that we are approaching to the end of this discussion. We still have 2 minutes. So now I would like, in fact, to wrap up that discussion, to raise my last question to Grazia and to offer the others to comment in the last remaining 2 minutes. Grazia, you have heard, in fact, all about what can be delivered, proposed, produced, and so on and so forth. Airbus recently unveiled several concept aircraft to bring a zero-emission aircraft to market by 2035. Which technology avenues are being explored in the Future Clean Aviation Partnership Program to implement such an aircraft concept?
Yes, Clean Aviation Program, as I mentioned before, is taking it all up a notch, really. It's going to be more ambitious, more disruptive, and much more focused. We want to demonstrate the technical and also economical viability for new generation aircraft configuration solutions. You heard from Paul, from Stefan, they're very eloquently articulated on the different pillars. We have the ultra efficient short medium range aircraft and the hybrid electric regional aircraft. And that's where we place our zero-E ambition, right? So different concept aircraft with one common denominator, hydrogen and electrification, of course, as primary power sources. Now, being Airbus an OEM, an integrator, it's important to underline that we really, our overall ambition consists of relying on the contribution of the entire European ecosystem, of which you have a great sample here today on the panel, right? Our esteemed partners, academia, of course, research institutes, SMEs, really to deliver a European program that is impactful, effective, and can deliver.
For this nice word, and now it's time for conclusion. I would like to thank you all for your contribution, for the description you gave about the present, the midterm, and the long-term perspectives. How will this ambition serve the climate neutrality objective, the interest of Europe, also the competitiveness of Europe, and the future way we are going to travel after the pandemic situation? Thank you to all, and I hand over the mic to Bernice.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. Oh, I'm learning so much, aren't you?
Yes, I did as well.
It's amazing. I mean, you're even an expert, and that's just fantastic. Well, we're coming slowly to the end of our seminar, but not quite yet. We still have we still actually have really important speakers. And that is Jean-Éric Paquet. He's the Director General, Directorate Research and Innovation of the European Commission. That's a very mouthful, but please take your time.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to join this year's conference and see many partners and friends, including in the session which just took place and where I listened in. And it's for me really a privilege to be able to speak with Axel as you complete your day's work, because we have had over the last 18 months a lot of opportunities to work together. I mean, a year ago, we were still meeting to progress on the preparation of the new partnership. The work continued very impressively in this new normal, but also, of course, in the context of this particularly deep crisis which the sector is confronted with, very successfully. I must say, I am really impressed, and the discussions which now took place have illustrated it in an extremely good way. I'm very impressed by how the European aviation industry is now coming together with research organizations and also knowledge across our SME and innovation ecosystems to bring Europe's industry indeed into this clean future. And the way you were discussing, Paul, Stefan, Grazia colleagues, is really extremely comforting in the choices, the strategic choices which were made 18 months ago to try to build this disruptive clean aviation partnership, allowing us to meet expectations from society. I mean, Paul spoke of politicians, but also indeed of citizens and young people, which want to look at a clean aviation sector as it moves into its future. And with these ambitions which we engaged in jointly 18 months ago, I think Europe also has now a head start. And my expectation is very much that the Clean Aviation Partnership really allows us to ensure that we keep this head start as our competitors and partners across the world, and of course, particularly in the US, are now also engaging, and that is to be much welcomed, into their own green climate transformation. So I do expect that your competitors will also now understand that the aviation industry needs to move towards clean aviation, zero emission aviation for the next generation of aircrafts, which the partnership will work on, demonstrate, and hopefully the industry will then be able to roll out in the next decade at scale, so that in 2050, you make your full contribution to Europe as a carbon neutral continent. The work was carried out under, of course, the auspices of Commissioner Maria Gabriel, which would have been delighted to close today, but asked me to do so. So I must say I'm very happy to have, as I said, that opportunity. And Maria Gabriel was, as I think most of you know, very keen to ensure that on our side, we make an adequate contribution to the partnership, notably from the point of view of the budget. And the budget figure, which is now put forward by the Commission in the Commission proposal for the Clean Aviation Partnership, 1,700 million euros, I think, is really what you on the side of the industry want now to match, so that we can have indeed also the investment, the research and innovation investment capacity to make this range of clean aircrafts a reality, and we develop them together until 2030. Maria Gabriel's ambition was not just budgetary, it was also to ensure that we properly connect your work in the partnership with a number of other key developments for you in digital technologies, in hydrogen, obviously, in AI also, or robotics. So there will be a major effort done, and the teams in DG Research and Innovation, which are supporting the Clean Aviation Partnership, and particularly Rosalinde van der Vlis and her teams, will ensure that all these partnerships are really interacting in a very operational way, not just notionally, but effectively, and I hope on a regular basis, so that you can fully rely on the output of these other partnerships to bring your own ambitions, our ambitions, forward impactfully. So you can certainly look into that with great confidence. I must say, dear colleagues, I'm also very pleased to see the excellent work which is now happening to also connect to the aviation partnership and more generally the aviation aeronautics research which will be carried out under Horizon Europe, because you know, of course, that you will also benefit from more classical consortia-driven research under Horizon Europe, which will also feed into the partnership and allow it, I hope, to move forward fast and effectively. But beyond these EU resources, there will also be a lot of work done with member states, sometimes with regions where those have research institutions or research capacity. In some cases also supported by Europe's investments into its recovery, the Next Generation EU and the recovery facility. These are all avenues which you are exploring with my teams, and where I see a lot of appetite from these national and regional actors to align their own research and innovation instruments, programs, investments with the Clean Aviation Partnership, confirming obviously that the ambition which is now embedded in the strategic research and innovation agenda of the partnership is one which really rallies Europe's aeronautical research and the expectation of administrations and politicians across member states and EU institutions. So that is all I find extremely promising. And again, the best illustration of it is what I just heard, seeing Paul, Stefan, Grazia, and many others speak very confidently about your capacity as industry, backed by many more players than in the past, to really deliver the aircrafts which will allow carbon neutral Europe with a key contribution from the aviation sector to be a reality by 2050. Horizon Europe, no doubt, will be a key contribution to it, and our common work will allow that. So that's in a nutshell what I wanted to say. So commend the work done, tell you how ambitious we are with you, and you can count on DG Research and Innovation to help you in the coming weeks as we set up the new partnership, and then in the implementation as we really ramp up the efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paquet, for your presentation. I'm sure that Clean Sky would be very happy with your final statement. And I guess it's time for our final delivery, and that is done by Axel Krijn. Are you there, Axel? Again, the Executive Director of Clean Sky to join the undertaking. Axel, you can wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bernice. And thank you, Jean-Eric. I mean, you have helped me already to wrap up a little bit because you picked some of the very, very important points in your speech already. Thanks a lot. And I would like to start by thanking all the speakers whom we have listened to this afternoon. An amazing cast, as I said at the beginning. And I think it was particularly interesting that we were hearing a lot about challenges, but we were hearing as often about opportunities, and we were hearing as often about solutions or potential solutions to the issue we have been discussing. So thanks a lot to all the speakers, but also I followed a bit the chat, and thanks a lot to the audience. I think you were very active. Unfortunately, we couldn't pick up all the questions and direct them into the discussion, but I think some of them have been directed and some of them have been also directly answered by our speakers. So thanks a lot to the speakers. Thanks a lot to the audience. I'd like to highlight a few points, and what is important to me is, again, it was about challenges, it was about opportunities, and it was about concrete solutions. And I think that is something which is going to guide us for the coming weeks, months, and years, because I think we need to ask ourselves, what can we do? What can we do in the Clean Sky 2 context, because the program is running for another 3 years, as you have heard. And then the Clean Aviation program, which is hopefully, as we have understood, to start by the end of this year, probably in November. So the question is, what does it mean for us? What can we do? And I think firstly, in the execution of the Clean Sky 2 program, we can do a lot because we are now moving into the demonstration phase. And those demonstrators will be the key ingredients for the future technologies, for the future aircraft. And we have heard today as well that despite the COVID-19 crisis, the pandemic, we are globally on track with delivery. That makes me very comfortable. And secondly, I think what we need to do is we need to use the time between now and the end of the year to define in detail what are the key ingredients of the future of the Clean Aviation Partnership. What are those bricks? What are those elements? How do they fit into the overall architecture so that we can define exactly what should be the focus areas, and as well then to launch those calls subsequently and hopefully in November of this year. I'd like to highlight one specific point. John-Eric, you mentioned that already, but I think that's for me one of the key points in this context. And this is the need to connect the various initiatives at European level, because we have initiatives at European level, other joint undertakings, collaborative research programs, and those are not connected yet. Secondly, we have programs at member state level or at regional level dedicated to aviation or adjacent to aviation. Also, those are not connected yet. And I think, and this is my strong conviction, that if we want to achieve our common vision all over Europe, making aviation climate neutral, then we will only succeed if we are able to align forces all around Europe. And we have heard about dialogue, we have heard about synergies. What I fear is that we are speaking a lot about synergies, but we are not really speaking about synergies and hardwiring those synergies. And I think this is still work which needs to be done. Lots of people have understood that, and we have started to work. And John-Eric, you have taken a few examples there where we are well advanced. In other areas, we still need to pick it up because I think we need to develop and need to invest in building those common technology roadmaps. Need to connect, to hardwire those programs, those independent programs, and synchronize them. So this is definitely something which we need to have in front of us and which we need to focus on top of the definition of the detailed technical content we are supposed to work on. So thank you to all of you for your presence, for your contributions, and for your overall support today. It was a pleasure to be with you in such a virtual event, but I must also admit I very much look forward to seeing you all again in a physical context, and I hope very much, and I'm expecting that our next event next April will be again a physical event where we can mix and mingle and exchange and touch technologies as well in an exhibition. Thanks a lot for your contribution. Thanks a lot for your participation. If you want to know more about Clean Sky, you have heard that we have this virtual online stand. Please connect via our website, and you see it coming up here. So that's the link. It's a fascinating tool to link up with people and to link up with experts in a remote way. Thanks again, and have a good afternoon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Axel. And also from us here in the studio in Brussels, we want to thank you all. I mean, I've seen the list of all the participants all over the world. It is truly phenomenal. Such an interest in this topic. And one last little thing of importance, do not forget to fill out your feedback form. It's very important for us to get some feedback to the event, and it will help us gear the right event for in the future. So thanks very much and good night.
Kissing lips, you're not listening. It slips and you're not interested in pictures of a burning town.